With that down, let's move on to the fifth and final main topic today. And our fifth and final main topic today gets submitted into us by Nathanael Molnár, who writes, I don't know if you saw, but Carey Mulligan recently made some comments suggesting that the Academy should have a policy in place to make sure that the voting body has actually seen the movies they're voting between. I'm all for it in principle, though I'm not sure how it could be implemented. What are your thoughts? Thanks, and bring on the filthy. All right, thanks a lot for saying that in, man. And listen, Carey Mulligan, one of the absolute great actresses in the business today. She's absolutely fabulous. But, you know, the questions come up a lot about the Academy Awards and the Oscars and how things are voted upon. And, you know, there was a report a few years ago about like 2 Academy members out of 7,000 said that there was 1 or 2 of the movies they didn't even watch before they voted. That got everybody upset. And I'm like, it's 2 out of 7,000. Don't worry about it. Anyway, Carey Mulligan was recently news, and in an interview, she said the following. She said, I think they need to be watched. I wonder if the system works in terms of getting sent 100 screeners. Maybe you shouldn't be allowed to vote unless you can prove you've seen every single one. There should be a test. The films that did get left out are indisputably brilliant. Of course, she's talking about some of the great movies this year that did not get an Academy Award nomination. But listen, that happens every single year. It happens every single freaking year. There are more than just 9 fantastic films every year. And what that means is that it is inevitable that every single year there are going to be some truly fantastic, brilliant movies that do not get a Best Picture nomination. That's the nature of it. That's just how it works. And you just kind of got to accept that as a part of the norm of the Oscars every year. But she does raise an interesting question. Should there be, even though I completely believe that the vast majority of the Academy absolutely watches all the major films being nominated before they vote, I do believe there are probably a couple that don't. I mean, that's just the math of it. But the sheer size of the voting body of the Academy Awards, I believe, kind of safeguards the Oscars from that kind of tomfoolery, if you will. That sort of tomfoolery. So I think it's kind of insulated and it protects itself in that way, although, you know, you never know for sure. Here's the good thing. The way the Academy Awards work is that every single category has its own branch, right? There's a director's branch of the Academy. There's an actor's branch of the Academy. There's a screenwriter's branch of the Academy. There's a performer's or an actor's branch of the Academy. It is each individual's branches with their nomination committees that come up with who the nominees are in each individual category. It's not the Oscar or the Academy as a whole that comes up with all the different nominees. It's actually the individual branches as led by the individual branches' nomination committees. Actually, a friend of mine is a part of the nominating committee of the SAG Awards. A buddy of mine was on the SAG Awards nomination committee. Anyway, so we're talking about the Oscars here. So in essence, really, because look, the idea that you would have to get every single Academy member who are working professionals to watch 600 films before the Academy Awards comes out, that's simply not feasible. That's just physically impossible. Can't be done. But once the individual branches make the nominations, then the entire Academy votes on those nominees to declare the winners. So the writer's branch comes up with the writer's nominees, but then the entire Academy votes on who wins, right? So now you don't have to watch 600 films. You just got to watch 5. You just got to make sure you saw the 5 that are nominated in the Best Writers category, or in the Best Lead Actress category, or in the Best Cinematography category, or in the Best Costume Design category, or in the Best Directors category. You just got to make sure you've seen those ones. So even though I believe that Oscar members not watching the movies, I don't believe it's a real issue. I believe you're gonna get less than 1% of the voting Academy that actually doesn't watch the movies anyway. But in principle of what Carey Mulligan is suggesting here, I don't mind that notion. I believe an Academy member should sign a waiver or sign a document that says, before they submit their votes for the Academy, that they have to sign a contract that says, I have indeed watched every one of the nominees, and I say that before here I cast my ballot for who I believe the winner should be, blah, blah, blah. I actually don't mind that idea. I don't think it's a real problem already, but I think this is something that could help. Now, the question then becomes, how do you enforce something like that? How do you enforce? Do you send a representative of the Academies, of the Academy Awards, to each member's house to sit down and watch them, observe them watching every movie? I mean, obviously, the question of enforcement is a big deal with any rules or regulations of bodies like this. I mean, how do you enforce it? Not sure. But I think it's at least a positive step to have Academy members sign a document that says, we swear that we've seen every single one. And if an Academy member has had such a busy year themselves that they haven't seen every one, give them an option to abstain from voting on a certain topic. So for instance, if you have this big list of Best Director nominees and there's one of the nominees you haven't watched their film yet this year, abstain from voting on that one. Give the voter an option to abstain. Or if they really have been so busy that year making 5 movies of their own, maybe give them an option to abstain and not submit a ballot at all that year. Again, I don't think it's desperately needed, but I think it would be beneficial. So I think there's some merit there. I think there's some merit there to what Carey Mulligan is suggesting. Question is, guys, how do you feel about that? Do you think that's actually something that the Oscars should be looking at? Yes or no? Do you think it's just, since you can't really enforce it, it makes it meaningless? Or do you think giving the Academy members the option to abstain from certain categories or as a whole could actually make the whole process a little bit more transparent and a little bit better? I don't know. How are you guys thinking about that? Jump down into the comments section below and let me know your thoughts. All right, guys.